A big, massive welcome today to Mark Clattenburg to the Non-League Radio Show. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm not bad. People probably don't know, but we'll go back a long way. I think I probably met you on the bus back from High Pit.
That's what I was just thinking, the High Pit Club. We built up a good friendship. And we didn't realise we were going to end up like living quite close together in Blythe, and then we built up a great friendship. So it's nice to be back in touch and nice to talk about a great subject, non-league football.
Yes, so before we get on to the refereeing, I think I played one game of football with you on a Saturday with Mark Story's team, and you give away a penalty. We'll not get into that. Anyway.
Come on. If I was ref, it would have been play on.
Anyway, what's your first memories of football and getting involved in it?
Yeah, from a refereeing side, getting involved, I used to play. I always wanted to play football. I always wanted to play at a high level. I just wasn't good enough. And then it was my school teacher, Mr. Reach from Cromlechton High School. He wanted us to play football, but he just realised that I just probably wasn't good enough. And I quickly realised I wasn't. And he took a group of guys to Bedlington High School, where we used to have to attend once a week under the guidance of Chris Newman, who was an instructor. He would do the referee exams, and once you passed the refereeing exams after 8 weeks, you became a referee. But that's just the start of it. Then you have to start refereeing in the different leagues. I was lucky enough very early that me dad used to be a coach at Wide Open Juniors, so he allowed me to referee them games under really good control, because the parents wouldn't want to say anything, or the son probably wouldn't play football if they abused the referee, especially with my father being the coach. So I was in quite a controlled environment. It was quite nice that I could build up some confidence, very young referee at 16, to be able to start refereeing. So that was a good start to my career.
Believe it or not, obviously we both know Chris. Well, I know Chris through cricket as well. I went to that course for a little while in Bedlam with Chris doing it. I don't know what ever happened, whether I dropped out. Obviously, I wasn't a good referee, but I dropped off and went into cricket.
Yeah, no, we used to play cricket together, but it's not just about refereeing. I think what's important, and it happens right across the whole of higher spectrum, is players are and they have to pass the laws of the game now. So it's not just about refereeing. I think it's quite a good course just to understand the laws of the game and how they're written, and then people probably have a better understanding why the referee gives certain decisions week in, week out, when because half the time they don't know the laws of the game because they've never studied the laws.
So from that point, when you pass that exam and you start getting placed in matches, what sort of, at your age, what were you, 15, 16? 16?
Yeah, it was scary. Yeah, really difficult. It's a difficult experience for a 16-year-old. It was more junior football. So I would referee certainly Sundays. I would do at least 2 games, sometimes 3 if time allowed it. But I would always do 2 games, especially at 16. It was all just junior football at first. So I would split my differences around the Cromlechton area because I couldn't drive. My parents would have to drive us. So it was more Cromlechton Blue Star, Cromlechton Juniors. From that, my father at Wide Open. So that would give us me the early part of my refereeing career. And then once you get to a certain age, you can start refereeing adult football. And I started off very quickly, probably end of 16, early 17, to referee adult football in the Cromlechton League, Blythe Sunday League, and the Morbid Sunday League. So that was my early part of refereeing adult football in them 3 leagues on a Sunday morning.
I'm guessing as a kid, you got some pocket money from these matches, or was it free? I don't know if people get pocket money.
No, it was always pocket. Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good pocket money from early at 16. Yeah, I had a few jobs as well. I was paper round. I had about 4 paper rounds. I was always wanting to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to earn money. Refereeing was a good way of earning a little bit of an income, but with that came its troubles, because refereeing adult football wasn't always easy. You weren't in that controlled environment as you were in junior football. You became isolated between, sometimes not more than 22 players. You had, your coaches, your people on the sidelines, and when you got higher, it was an easy life for me when I got higher in refereeing because I had assistant referees. When I first started off, you had to use club officials, and they would just stand on the halfway line just to flag anything that was going. So half the time you spent your time even looking for offsides, making sure that they weren't cheating, to protect their own club, to make sure that the game was as fair as possible. And, with that, had its downsides because you got a lot of abuse.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that now because obviously I read a lot of things about referees and lower levels getting abuse and things like that. See videos of things online. I noticed I was reading a story the day you said, and I'm going to bring something in as well about someone saying they're going to break your legs after the match.
Yeah, but it wasn't just on a Sunday, Steve. It used to happen, if you remember, when we used to go out as friends to Whitley Bay, and you'd go to the toilet and you'd end up bumping into somebody that you'd refereed on a Sunday or even on a Saturday afternoon, previous weeks ago, and maybe disagree with the decision. And when they'd had alcohol in them, it became, a different environment. And, on one side, it gave us the survival, the way, a technique to manage people, because you certainly had to manage people. But there was always times where I had an example in my recent book that I wrote, Whistleblower, that, it was in the Morpeth Sunday League, and, I was frightened to send the player off because he threatened us, and eventually I had to send him off, and I did send him off. And for the next 10, 15 minutes of that match till the end, I was scared. I was scared of being assaulted. There was no support. I was out there on my own. Lucky enough, nothing happened after the match, but that threat was there. And, how much is that happening? We're seeing more and more, referees being assaulted. And now they're doing something about it by allowing referees to wear body cams because, unfortunately, in the past, that the courts, the police couldn't do anything unless they had evidence. Now they're going to have evidence on body cams. So I'm hoping by having a body cam, on board, it'll stop players doing what they've done in the past. So hopefully it'll be a positive step.
Yeah, and I've got first hand of this because you took me to a match in the Cramilton area. I won't say the team or the player because I know the player as well. And it kicked off in that game, and I'm on the sideline thinking, what we're going to do here? This is going to get naughty. This is get me out of here. This is going to get me naughty. This is going to get very naughty. And I thought the guy wanted sending off, but then all manner of rubbish went on after, and I couldn't believe. When I look back now, think how you've gotten the way you have, putting up with rubbish like that down the line.
Yeah, but that's part of what I said just before. It helped me management skills. If you look at referees, most of them come out school teachers, policemen, which gives them that, they've got skill sets of management. I didn't. I was just an electrician. So I had to learn management skills very, very quickly. You've got to diffuse situations. For example, say the wrong thing at the wrong time could infuse a situation. Other times it can calm situations down. So where I used my techniques when I was out in, Whitley Bay on a Friday night, for example, or a Saturday night, ahead of Sundays, you also had players who, you could clearly smell that smell of alcohol, and you're having to deal with them on a Sunday. And I remember sitting in changing rooms very lonely. I used to always get to the changing rooms as late as possible, quickly get changed. I used to sometimes have my kit underneath. But I remember used to get the team sheet and used to get the ages, and I used to think, God, I'm the youngest, and I was always the youngest. I used to always look at the database, think there's any players around my age. And there never were. They were always older, and with that, you're just trying to build up, the best reputation you can. And yeah, there was isolated incidents. You mentioned one, I mentioned one. But they were isolated incidents over as many matches I did in non-league. I didn't get, for example, when I was 16 under the old refereeing system and promotion system, I was class 3, which is what you first started off as, I got promoted at 17 to class 2, and I got promoted again class 1 at 18. So within 3 consecutive years, I got promoted. And with promotion, you had to be watched by assessors to make sure that you were competent at doing your job. So people thought I was competent. Clubs were marking as well. I was building up a reputation, but there was isolated incidents. And, it happens more and more now, what we're seeing. And I suppose in them days, I didn't have social media. We didn't have mobile phones. So probably that helped as well, where I'm saying probably helped. We're probably seeing more now because we're getting it on people's mobiles, where in the past, when referees were getting threatened, there was no video footage available. It was my word against theirs.
And on the subject we're on, I had a question sent to us on Twitter from Kobe Perch, and he said, how did you handle the negative criticism that you get as a non-league referee from other managers and players, and was it difficult, and did it affect your mental health?
Yeah, no, you never really thought about mental health in them days.
No.
It's just more and more, it's come more and more important now, and I think that's changed with social media. We didn't have social media then, so we lived in a different world. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't, we had newspapers, and then newspapers became chip shop papers. So, they were quickly forgotten about. They weren't online. They weren't permanent as they are now, which does affect you. But in them days, it wasn't. It was, there was more. It was trying to build up reputations as good as you could be. So when you next went back to that club, they were comfortable, they were happy. And that was the most important thing for me. We have the laws of the game. Of course, we have to abide by the laws of the game. We also have the spirit of the game. We have a lot of things that referees have to do. But one of the most important things I've tried to do when I was refereeing non-league football was to have as many handshakes as possible, to have as many satisfied people as possible, which then allowed us to referee that club again without any problems. And that's how I used to build up each time. I used to think, I've refereed this club before, or I've refereed this club before, and they were happy. There was no problems. And then you go into that match, and then you get the 2 teams that were happy, and then you referee them again. And as long as nothing happens, you try to build up your reputation like that. So the more you got positives, when you did have a bad performance, they were probably thinking, he's not a bad referee. Him, well, give him a bit of slack. It's when you started making mistakes as early as possible, and they didn't like you, then it became more and more difficult. So, we didn't have the scrutiny that non-league referees have now. We've even seen a lot of non-league football on social media, so they have to deal with that. But we didn't have that problem.
You touched on it earlier about progressing. I don't know if it's the same now or it's different now. You went through different classes, you were saying. So was that someone assessing you at every game as you went up, or was it a mix of that and then people giving you marks when you were refereeing at different clubs?
Yeah, it's a complete different system now. There's class 9, 8, 7. I've lost the way the system is now. But class 3 used to be Sunday morning. Class 2 was still Sunday morning. With a little, and then when you got to class 1, you could referee, Northern Lions. Being assistant referee in the Northern League. I remember my first Northern League match was Alnwick against Morbeth. Morbeth's first game in the Northern League. And I think I'm trying to remember my first Northern Lions. I remember refereeing Amble many times in the famous orange colours. And I can't remember my very first Northern Lions game, but at 18-year-old, you're then into another level, because the Northern League was very powerful back. I'm talking 28 years ago. It was a very powerful league, some very good sides, and it was there was some really, really good players. So to be an assistant referee in the Northern League and to referee in the Northern Lions, the West Allotments, Carlisles, Ponteelans, Ambles, some really, really good teams in there. So it was like a new set when I got to class 1 to referee in that level. And I found it difficult, really difficult, because I was young, 18-year-old, trying to be accepted, because there wasn't many young referees in refereeing at that time. All the referees were old, because it was, most of the referees got into football very, very late, where I tried it very, very young. And I spent my first 2 seasons in the Northern Alliance, and it was the 2 seasons I went to referee in the Northern Intermediate League, which was the youth leagues of the clubs, so Newcastle, Sunderland, Carlisle. But then that had its problems because most of the kickoffs were always 2:00, and it was very difficult to get time off work. So it was trying to balance me work, but also on a Saturday not doing overtime, which was a big part of your job, trying to get overtime in, still refereeing, still trying to get up the ladder in refereeing with a job as well. So the balance was really, really difficult. But I spent the 4 years till I was 22 refereeing in them leagues. And then it was like, after that, it was just a whirlwind from that league to Northern League refereeing. What you did is you always went up as a referee, but you went high as an assistant, and then you kept doing that till you get to the Football League, where eventually I became a Football League referee and then Premier League referee.
I was going to say, because I haven't, till I've researched this today, from 1993 to 2000, obviously them years, the Northern League assistant, Northern League, then the Football Conference as it was. That's a massive jump in a short space of time. And you touched on your work there. I was going to say, how does that must have a massive effect on trying to balance your work and your refereeing together at the same time.
Yeah, well, I lost a lot of money. I lost a lot of overtime money because it was always time and a half till midday, double time on an afternoon, double time on a Sunday. So I lost a lot of money not doing overtime because I wanted to referee. I loved it, and I wanted to. I felt I was half good at it, so therefore I wanted to have the best chance to. And I used to go and watch Newcastle reserves, and I always said to myself, I would love to be a referee. And I remember as a young referee, I got the chance to be fourth official at St James's Park, Newcastle West Ham. And when you get a taste of that level as a young referee, even though you're still operating within the grassroots as a referee, it gives you a buzz and it gives you an urge that you want to reach the very, very top. So yes, you have to start off somewhere, and yes, you need luck. I got a big luck in one of me matches where I was an assistant referee. One of the assistants said, "Mark, you have a better chance than me." Don McLeod, he was senior assistant, said, "No, you'll be senior assistant." The referee got injured, so I ended up refereeing Barrow and Russian Diamonds. And Russian Diamonds were always on the TV because it drawn with Leeds in the FA Cup. So they were going to play Leeds the following week in the FA Cup. So there was big publicity, and I'm out in the middle for best part of 80 minutes, and the game went really well from a refereeing point of view. So you need luck like that in your refereeing career to give you a chance to get promoted.
I mean, I don't want to know figures, obviously, but I'm guessing all the way to sort of nearly the Premier League guys will have other jobs outside of...
Yeah, they still have jobs, Steve. I remember still I was trying to balance, even in the first year of my Premier League career, because the problem you had even at the highest level is you've got to make a decision between finishing your career and then becoming a referee. And what happens after 3-4 years? You get a serious injury or you get demoted, which means I've lost all of my career because I would have to retrain. So it's a big gamble. It's not an easy decision to think I'm just going to go professional referee, because you still want to keep interests within employment, because refereeing such a short career. What do you do after your refereeing's over? So it's a big risk. I stayed in my employment as long as possible, but I just couldn't balance it after the first year of being in the Premier League and starting to become a fourth official on UEFA matches with some of the top referees in England. So it became impossible to balance both, but you needed both just to have that security.
And apart from the weekend when you're actually refereeing, I'm guessing there's more work after that. If you've booked someone or someone's been sent off, you've got to put reports in. So that's taking time as well. Yeah,
especially I remember there used to be some software equipment that used to make your life as easy as possible, because when you first started off, it was all paper. So you ended up having a paper copy either sent, you used to post it off. So you had to write the report as detailed as possible, because especially if you're sending somebody off, they could appeal. You don't want to go to an appeal with, a half-written report. So you've got to explain what's actually happened in the best detail possible. The software became later on where you could actually do it on a computer, which made your life a little bit easier. And then, that got emailed off. So technology did move forward, which did make it as easy as possible. It wasn't just like, the match report at the end of the game, you signed it off. Then reports then had to go to the different associations, Northumberland or Durham, if you cautioned or sent somebody off. And I went to some tribunals, because player had been sent off and he's appealing over his send off, or the club's appealing over a penalty that they've received. So, most of the time, if your report was well written, then most of the time they would always side with the referee in appeals because it's their word against yours. But they would always try and support the referee as much as possible, as long as it was written correctly, certain terminology was used correctly, then it was fine.
You've obviously went from lower leagues to the top. I was going to say, what did you have to adapt a lot from the moving through the leagues to getting to the Premier League? Like different styles of football. I'm guessing being a bit more cut and thrust, slower down. I would say. You have to adapt along the way.
Some things were more enjoyable. You lost that human touch, I suppose. When I left non-league football, I lost that. Even Northern Lions, Northern League, never a Sunday morning because you left straight after a game. But when you refereed in the Northern Lions or the Northern League or even an assistant referee, there was always the clubhouse afterwards. You would never have a match fee at the end of it because you'd buy some beers, and there would always be food on. The hospitality was always great, win, lose or draw. So there was always that really good hospitality side of it. So I missed that. I missed, the local sides, the people, the Northern League people, who do a lot for non-league football in the Northeast. So, even we've had big successes over the last 20 years in the Vars. So it shows how Northeast non-league football is so high. And so making that transition, the only transition which was always different was in the Northern League, for example, you couldn't swear. So if a player swore, they got a red card. Even if, for example, they got hit in a bad tackle and they swore out loud in frustration, they would get sent off. I don't know what it's like now, but that's how it was when I was a referee. So we didn't have that. We had a good discipline. The discipline was really, really strong in the Northern League. So it was, as a referee, you could go and referee and, the crowd would give you a stick. I remember, Towel Mary, she would abuse you at the start of the game, middle of the game, half time, end of the game. And that was just her personality. And you knew when you went to certain grounds, there was always them type of people. But that was the heart and soul of it. And when you went up to the for example, to the Football League, it became more professional. You arrive an hour and a half before the game. The clubs are more professional. And then you go to the Premier League and it's completely professional. You can't walk through a door without having a pass. All of that it was just a different level, and the scrutiny became different. Now you look at the Premier League, the scrutiny that the referees are under is huge, and everybody that sits on an armchair everywhere around the UK, around the world, have an opinion about a refereeing decision, because unfortunately, refereeing in football in general is opinion. There's not many decisions that are actual factual, and everybody has an opinion. But unfortunately, the referee doesn't seem to have an opinion anymore because nobody seems to care about that opinion.
This might be a while ago, it might be hard to answer. I've got two questions here. Your favourite non-league ground that you've refereed at?
I used to enjoy Bedlington. I enjoyed refereeing there. The atmosphere, they were very strong when I was a referee. They did very well in the FA Cup, beating Colchester. They always did well in the Vars. They won the Vars. So it was always after the match. It was always good atmospheres. And I used to enjoy going to West Allotment. And the people there, I think it was John Jackson, I think, if I recall his name correctly. And, these people were the heart and soul of clubs. And, the atmospheres were always good. There were good teams. And you always knew that when you refereed them clubs, you were in for a really good match. There were really good standard of football and had some really good players. They could have been professional footballers, but because of their jobs, they couldn't make that transition. So, that's when you knew, for example, even though the Northern League, you were still refereeing Northern League, you were actually refereeing probably some of the lower teams in the conference, because the Northern League was that strong in them days.
And the hardest place to referee at that you've been to, whether that's for getting stick or whatever, I don't know. But
trying to. You could have given us these questions.
Put you on the spot.
I'm trying to think. It was, there wasn't many that I didn't like going to. Sunday mornings wasn't. They were just park fields. Sometimes you had 3 and 4 matches on at the same time. So I never really, had really difficult times. I had some great memories. Alnwick, Morpeth. I've said like Bedlington. There was one. I had one problem. I was trying to remember the cup final I refereed. Was it West Auckland? I can't remember the two teams. One was Bedlington, and I can't remember the other team. They were difficult. Sometimes, wasn't. Sometimes it was the atmosphere. Sometimes it was the game. And I'm just trying to think. There wasn't many. Like Whitby was nice. West Auckland. There was some. I think I tell you what, the weirdest ground wasn't the worst ground I refereed, was probably Wickham, only because of the slope on the pitch. And if you ever did a night match at Wickham, the floodlights weren't the best, so you could hardly see. But as a club, they were fantastic after the match. So, most of the times when you refereed in the Northern League, you judge the club by the hospitality at the end of the game. Probably wasn't about the stadiums, So I've had some great memories.
And so, any advice for any young child or kid wanting to get involved in refereeing?
Yeah, it's like the thing is now refereeing is a profession, which is good. I think professionalising refereeing is a step forward. It gives people a chance. Young players who don't make it into the game at 15, 16. Or children, boys, girls that want to become referees. I think we need to do more to protect young referees in particular from the abuse that they take, social media or on the parks, because that's how we lose most of the retention. I think we've got 29,000 referees in England, but we'll lose so many because of the abuse that they take. So if we can control it in a good environment, the rewards are so big, where it gives you a chance to earn some money. It gives you the chance to enhance your skills, which helps you in jobs. For example, you can referee as a young referee, which will help you, for example, to be a policeman, to be a school teacher, because of their man management skills. So it gives you skills along the way. But also the rewards are so big if you're good at it to become, a referee in the Premier League, internationally. I've had the chance to referee some of the biggest matches in the world, all because I started off at the grassroots, which was the non-league football.
Last couple of questions, I promise. Firstly, I want you to plug your book a little bit. That would be good.
Yeah, no. Last year it was always my idea when I left. I left the Premier League to write a book, and it was always in the pipeline because unfortunately I was still active refereeing. You can't really write a book if you're still active. So even though I left the Premier League in 2017, I went to still referee and to educate in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, and then I went to China for 1 year as a referee. So I didn't want to write the book till I finished in China. And unfortunately, my career in China ended because of COVID. So I thought it was a good time to start writing the book during COVID with the help of Craig Cope, who was a journalist for the Daily Mail. And it was an idea just to get across, because everybody had a perception of me, arrogance, whatever that they used to see us on TV. But but that's not the character. It's like the characters on Coronation Street, EastEnders or whatever. The characters, and I was dealing with multimillionaires, so you have to act in a certain way with these type of people. So what people perceived as me was what they used to say on the TV, but that isn't me as a person. So I wanted to write a book, giving people an insight of what it's like to be a referee, but also what I am as a person. And I thought it came across quite well that, give it balance back, that, I've gone through a lot. My parents didn't have any money. I always wanted to survive. I came from a council background, and I had that drive. I wasn't gifted, but I had that drive to succeed, and I wanted to succeed to be the best in the world. It's something, and I achieved that in 2017 when I was awarded the best referee in the world. So I achieved so much. I couldn't have done it without people. Of course, you need people, and there's a long list of people that I've mentioned in my book. So, yeah, I hope that people, not just non-league people, not just Northeast people, I just hope that people can read it, and it gives people an insight of, the big games, what it feels like when you get the appointment, the build up to the game, what the game was like. For example, walking out in the Champions League final, all I thought about when I was walking out the tunnel was, don't drop the match ball off the plinth. How stupid that is, but that's what I was thinking at that time. So I hope it gives people an insight of what it was like from my journey from being a player in school to becoming, ending my international career in Melbourne.
I was going to find out what you're doing at the minute, because I keep seeing you popping up. I've seen a video with you with Sam Allardyce the other day, so you're popping up here and there on TV.
Podcast, adverts. What was it? Adverts as well.
Adverts, yeah, I've seen you on that.
No, it's nice because people, people want to listen to stories, and I've been fortunate that I've ended my refereeing career. UEFA asked us after COVID to go to Greece for 2 years as an advisor to help them with their refereeing. And I'm still a consultant for the league for 2 years, so I'm trying to help them build professional refereeing. But I went to Egypt for a few months and didn't really work out. They had different views to what I had. And I didn't really enjoy the time while I was there. Well, I didn't enjoy the time and I have family back in the UK. It was a decision that I had to make, that it was time to spend a little bit of time back with my family before I take on the next challenge. Yeah, I've got different podcasts now. It seems to be the end thing. Different media stuff. Still doing bits for BT, and so it's keeping us busy. And I want to get back into either build a professional refereeing for Greece and then go back to Greece as the head of refereeing next season, or if that doesn't happen, another project. But I need a project. I need something now. I'm 48 years old next week, so I'm still fairly young.
You make me feel old.
And, of course, now I get old. But it's interesting because now it's most referees don't finish till 50, but I've had huge experiences. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've experienced the Arab countries. Little things that people don't understand. I remember a game, and it was the big derby game, and they kept changing the date of the game 3 days before. Oh, we're going to move it to a Monday, then we're going to move it to a Saturday, then we're going 3 days before the game. And you realise how that doesn't happen in the Premier League, but it happens in different parts of the world. And China was another difficult experience because of the food, the lifestyle, the time differences. Speaking to your family, and the difficulties of speaking to your family, because using WhatsApp, where we think it's easy, they don't like to use WhatsApp, so you have to use VPNs. You have to find ways to be able to speak to your family, and also the temperatures, the food. You were fatiguing during games because you weren't eating the right food, because what Chinese people eat to what European eat is completely different. So all of these experiences has been, I wouldn't have had these experiences if I didn't become a referee. If I became a football player, I don't think I would have reached them levels. So for me, it was the best decision I ever made.
Oh, it's been great talking to you, Mark. Don't go anywhere, mind, by the way. I want to have a chat with you before you disappear. But
No problem.
it's been absolutely class catching up with you again. I
No problem.
could have
Good
talked for
luck.
hours.
I hope people enjoyed it. And, it's what you're doing, Steve's great, and the non-league is unbelievable. What the Northeast clubs have done over the years and still do, and it's for me, it was always the best part of the world to ever to referee in is the Northeast. So I've had some great experiences from the Northern Alliance, Northern League, the Sunday leagues, and very enjoyable.
Spot on. Well, thank you very much, pal.
No problem. Thanks, Steve.